Mm-hmm.
Even though there are some that claim that there were reflections in our helmet that showed these glass towers and things, and that's just total nonsense.
Okay. So you try to separate the fact from the fiction there, but you don't dismiss, as you said earlier, the idea that we are being visited. You know, it does seem strange though that most of the sightings seem to be right here. They don't ever seem to be coming from out there. They seem to always just be here. I mean, so you think it's...
Well, you just couldn't see them up there.
Okay. So they wouldn't come into any radar, coming into the atmosphere, leave a hole in the clouds, or any such thing, huh?
Oh, well, we see them on radar all the time. Absolutely.
You see them on radar?
Sure. There have been visual sightings, radar sightings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the number of sightings in the literature and the people that really investigated is really overwhelming. It happens all the time.
Yeah. What do you think about...
Airline pilots, military pilots.
Okay. What do you think about this sighting over there in Stephenville, Texas?
I didn't follow that too well. It's only one of many that have occurred, and I was busy with some other projects at that time, and it didn't sound any different than some of the others I've heard about.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about your book, your journey through the material world. Now, are you, since you evidently are sort of evolving in your consciousness, do you expect that there's going to be another book to follow this one to include more experiences?
Well, I suspect I will write another book here in the not too distant future, particularly as this modern work I have been doing in quantum holography, which is a phenomenon maybe we won't talk about a little bit, matures and we understand it better. It's probably worth another book, and maybe a couple more, as long as I feel strong enough and healthy enough to do it.
In 1972, when you founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences, educate this radio host. What's noetic science?
Well, noetic comes out of the Greek word nous, N-O-U-S, pertaining to mind and how we apprehend information. The English word that expresses that is noetic. It's a word meaning how we apprehend information, including our intuitive and our normal sensory mechanisms.
Sort of a follow-up on the alien theme there. Do you? And this is from the live chat line. Do you believe that aliens have helped the Earth in any way?
Well, there are some that claim communications with them, and I have not had that, and I can't verify that. But there are those that claim contact, and I would say that. Well, let me make a couple statements. They certainly have not proved to be hostile, I don't believe, even though there are some nebulous things going on. And there are some that claim to have had contact and very close contact with them. And I can't speak to that since I have not.
Okay.
But I would also say I think it's quite possible these days that some of the sightings are homegrown. I would think that perhaps in the 60 years since the Roswell incident, and this had happened in those days, that perhaps the back engineering has let the group that has cloaked all of this, has let them be able to produce craft of this type. I would not be surprised.
Okay.
I don't know if it's true, but I'm not surprised.
All right. We have this question come in on the Edge's website, Fast Blast Line. Dr. Mitchell, how do we explain so much taxpayer money used on exploring space when we haven't figured out how to feed the people on the Earth?
Well, my response to that is there hasn't been $1 spent in space. It's all spent on jobs here. And
Point taken.
I would say you can ask the same question about war, so let's stop killing each other and use that money for more benign projects. But let me put it in also a slightly different way, that sooner or later we're going to have to be off this planet. Our sun is going to burn out, and this solar system will not exist. And sooner or later we must leave. And so it's not too soon to start thinking about it. And it so happens that there are study groups working right now of space pioneers or very knowledgeable people looking to how do we mine asteroids, how do we mine some of the moon, properties of the moon, to get the resources that we need, because we are utilizing our non-renewable resources at an alarming rate, at an unsustainable rate. And in due course, and in the very short future, unless we change our ways, we're in very serious trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, how is it we can put a man on the moon, but we can't solve our energy problems here?
Because we haven't got the people to focus on those issues. It's a matter of intent. Mm-hmm. And when we start to see the problem and see what we're doing, let me use a little analogy, if I may.
All right.
My great-grandparents went across from South Georgia to West Texas at the end of the Civil War in the 1870s. Covered wagons pulled by horses, a few head of cattle to start a new life there. The railroads weren't complete across the South and the West of the United States at that time. Automobiles hadn't been invented. Electric lights hadn't been invented. My father was born just shortly after the Wright brothers made the first flight in an airplane. And I went to the moon. From covered wagons to going to the moon in less than 100 years. And we have had the thousands of years of human experience before that. What we have done in the last, and 130 years since going to the moon, almost 40, going to the moon, we have multiplied ourselves. Every measure of human activity is on an exponential growth curve. And it doesn't take genius to understand that exponential growth can continue indefinitely in a finite space. And that's exactly what's happening. In other words, we're outgrowing our planet, and we're consuming it, and we're destroying the environment, and we're multiplying faster than we can take care of ourselves. And who's going to stop that? We've got to. We can't count on aliens to it. We have to change our ways. And it's getting awfully late. I've been lecturing on this subject now for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And until we stop doing the things we're doing, in other words, how many new VCRs, new automobiles, television sets do we need in a year? We've got to learn to live more simply and get away from the fact that the erroneous notion that wealth is going to make us happy. Okay, we have to make a living, we have to feed the family, we have to put shelter over our heads. And creature comforts, there's nothing wrong with them if we learn how to live simply.
Mm-hmm. Well, it does seem that perhaps the government could harness some of the technology and brain powers over there at NASA to think about some of these things more than, say, put more spacecraft on the moon.
Well, I agree, but if the moon and space is going to help us solve some of the problems, and certainly orbiting spacecraft has given us surveillance tools that we never had before. We can look at Earth and see exactly what's happening here, and that's a very important aspect of the space mm-hmm. environment. Yeah. Now, I will grant you that the Apollo program was a program out of time. We were ahead of ourselves. And let me express it this way. We will go to the moon. We'll go to Mars in due course. And provided we don't blow ourselves up here with stupidities, we will go to Mars in due course. And when we look back from Mars at this tiny little speck we call Earth, it'll sound kind of foolish to say I came from the United States, Canada, Britain, Israel, Russia, Germany. No. We came from Earth. Mm-hmm. And we haven't got our act together to do that yet.
Yeah.
Until we can get our act together, that's the first thing that we need to be doing. And all of the rest of it is moot.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that there will be a time when you expect that humans need to leave this planet. But wouldn't you say, though, that if that technology ever were to happen, that obviously only a few select people would be able to go as far as building the spaceships, and wouldn't it be those who consider themselves of an elevated consciousness that will be first on the trip and leave the Neanderthal type, non-progressive type people on the Earth?
Well, I'm not going to make that sort of suggestion, but because